The hum of the starship's engines was a low, steady pulse beneath his feet as Marcus adjusted the settings on the atmospheric stabilizer. He had been on board the SS Horizon for nearly 5 years now, serving as chief engineer and unofficial problem solver for every technical hiccup that arose during their interstellar voyages. It wasn't glamorous work, far from it, but it kept him grounded in a life where the vastness of space often felt overwhelming. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his fingers smudged with grease from hours spent repairing a faulty coolant line. The ship had just emerged from a particularly turbulent asteroid field, and though they'd escaped unscathed, the strain on its systems lingered like an ache. He sighed heavily, leaning against the console to catch his breath. For all the wonders of modern technology, there were still moments when brute force and sheer willpower seemed to be the only tools at his disposal. As he worked, snippets of conversation drifted through the corridors outside the engine room. Crew members chattered excitedly about their next destination, a planet known as Zanara Prime, home to one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Rumors swirled about diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and even sightings of royalty. Marcus paid little attention to such talk. Politics held no interest for him, not when his focus needed to remain squarely on keeping the ship running smoothly. Still, he couldn't deny a flicker of curiosity about what lay ahead. It wasn't long before Captain Alira called over the ship-wide comm system, her voice calm but firm. All crew members report to the main deck. We've received clearance to dock at Zanara Prime. Prepare for disembarkation protocols. Her words sent a ripple of anticipation through the ship. Marcus groaned softly under his breath, knowing full well that disembarkation protocols meant scrubbing down every inch of visible surface until it gleamed like new. First impressions mattered, especially when dealing with beings who could dismantle your entire existence with a single thought if offended. He pushed himself away from the console and stretched his arms above his head, feeling the satisfying crack of joints protesting after hours hunched over machinery. As much as he dreaded the chore awaiting him, Marcus knew better than to ignore direct orders. Besides, there was something oddly cathartic about routine tasks, even if they involved polishing bulkheads until they reflected his tired face back at him. By the time he reached the main deck, the rest of the crew had already gathered, bustling around with nervous energy. Some polished uniforms while others double-checked equipment or rehearsed formal greetings under their breath. Marcus hung back near the edge of the crowd, preferring to observe rather than participate in the frenzied preparations. His gaze wandered to the viewport, where Zanara Prime loomed large against the blackness of space. Its surface shimmered with iridescent hues, a kaleidoscope of colors that shifted and danced like liquid light. It was beautiful, almost otherworldly, and yet, somehow unsettling. "Don't look so glum," said Jax, the ship's navigator, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "This could be our big break. Imagine the stories we'll have after meeting actual alien dignitaries." Marcus snorted. "Stories are great, sure. But I'd settle for not screwing this up." Jax grinned, undeterred by Marcus's skepticism. "Relax. What's the worst that can happen?" Little did either of them know, those words would soon prove prophetic. The docking bay of Zanara Prime was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Towering crystalline spires spiraled upward, refracting light into dazzling patterns that painted the walls in shifting rainbows. The air smelled faintly sweet, carrying with it a subtle hum that resonated deep within his chest. Around him, the crew stood rigidly in formation, their faces masks of forced composure as they awaited the arrival of their hosts. Marcus adjusted the collar of his freshly cleaned uniform, feeling out of place amidst the opulence surrounding them. A low murmur rippled through the group as a procession entered the chamber. At its center walked a figure whose presence commanded instant silence. She moved with fluid grace, her every step deliberate and measured, as though she carried the weight of entire worlds on her shoulders. Her skin shimmered faintly, catching the light in ways that made it seem alive, and her eyes, large luminous orbs framed by delicate lashes, seemed to pierce straight through anyone who dared meet her gaze. This was Princess Velithra, heir to the Zanaran throne and, by all accounts, one of the most revered figures in the galaxy. Marcus found himself transfixed despite himself. There was something mesmerizing about her, not just her ethereal beauty, but the quiet authority that radiated from her very being. He quickly averted his eyes, reminding himself of the importance of maintaining proper decorum. Diplomatic missions were delicate affairs, and even the slightest misstep could lead to catastrophic consequences. Yet, try as he might, he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this moment felt off. Perhaps it was the way the princess paused briefly, scanning the assembled humans with an unreadable expression, or how the ambient hum in the room seemed to intensify whenever she drew near. Captain Alira stepped forward, bowing deeply in greeting. "Your Highness," she began, her voice steady and respectful, "we are honored to stand before you today. May our visit serve as a testament to the enduring bonds between our peoples." Princess Valethra inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the gesture without speaking. Instead, she gestured for the humans to follow her further into the palace. As they moved, Marcus fell into line behind the others, trying to keep his focus on the task at hand. The corridors they traversed were equally breathtaking, lined with intricate carvings that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent energy. Each step took them deeper into a world that defied comprehension, where technology and nature intertwined seamlessly. Despite the awe-inspiring surroundings, Marcus couldn't help but feel a growing unease. His nose tickled insistently, a precursor to what promised to be an uncontrollable sneeze. He clenched his jaw, willing himself to suppress it. Sneezing here, of all places, would be nothing short of disastrous. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Just as the procession halted in front of an enormous set of double doors adorned with glowing glyphs, Marcus felt the telltale pressure building in his sinuses. No amount of pinching his nostrils shut or holding his breath could stop what came next. With a loud, involuntary achoo, he expelled a spray of droplets directly toward the princess. Time seemed to freeze as everyone turned to stare at him, their expressions ranging from shock to outright horror. For a moment, Marcus wished he could simply vanish into thin air. He opened his mouth to apologize profusely, but no words came out. Instead, the princess raised a slender hand, silencing any attempt at explanation. Her gaze locked onto his, unreadable yet piercing, as if searching for some hidden meaning behind the accidental act. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she spoke, not in anger, but with a tone laced with curiosity. "You carry the essence of your kind within you," she said softly, her melodic voice carrying a strange gravity. "Even in this unexpected exchange, I sense no malice." Before anyone could respond, the doors swung open, revealing a grand hall bathed in golden light. The princess motioned for the humans to proceed, her demeanor unchanged. Marcus hesitated, acutely aware of the stares boring into him from all sides. Whatever judgment awaited him, he knew it wouldn't come immediately. For now, he followed the others inside, his mind racing with questions far more unsettling than any diplomatic protocol. What had just happened? And why did he feel as though his life had irrevocably changed in the span of a single sneeze? The grand hall stretched endlessly before them, its domed ceiling adorned with floating orbs of light that pulsed rhythmically, casting ever-shifting shadows across the marble floor. Intricate mosaics depicting celestial events covered every wall, their vibrant colors seeming to shift and dance as if alive. Despite the splendor surrounding him, Marcus could barely take it in. His thoughts churned relentlessly, replaying the moment of his sneeze over and over again in his mind. He felt exposed, raw, as though the entire universe had conspired to single him out for ridicule, or worse. As the humans settled into their designated seats, Marcus noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Conversations among the crew had dwindled to murmurs, and even Captain Alira appeared unusually subdued. No one dared mention the incident aloud, yet it hung between them like an invisible barrier. Jack shot Marcus a sympathetic glance, but the navigator's usual levity was conspicuously absent. The weight of collective expectation pressed down on Marcus, making it hard to breathe. When the princess finally addressed the assembly, her voice carried a resonance that silenced even the faintest whisper. She spoke of unity, of bridging divides between species, and of fostering mutual understanding. Her words were eloquent, inspiring even, yet Marcus struggled to focus. Every time she glanced in his direction, he felt a jolt of anxiety, certain that her gaze lingered longer than necessary. Was she watching him? Judging him? The uncertainty gnawed at him, amplifying his discomfort. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Gifts were exchanged, ornate artifacts from Zanara Prime presented to the humans, along with promises of shared knowledge and resources. Marcus barely registered the details, his attention fractured by the mounting dread coiling in his gut. When the proceedings concluded, the crew rose to depart, but Marcus found himself rooted to the spot, unable to move. Something told him this wasn't over, not by a long shot. It was then that the royal advisor approached, his movements precise and deliberate. Dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid silver, he carried an aura of authority that demanded respect. Without preamble, he addressed Marcus directly. "You are required to remain," he stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. The others hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances, but ultimately filed out of the hall under the watchful eyes of Zanaran guards. Alone with the advisor and the princess, Marcus felt the full weight of his predicament settle over him. His heart pounded erratically as the advisor continued, his voice steady and clinical. What transpired earlier was not merely an accident. According to our laws, any physical interaction involving bodily fluids carries profound implications. Your emission has bound you to Her Highness in ways incomprehensible to your kind. To sever this connection would bring dishonor upon both our peoples. Marcus's stomach dropped. I don't understand," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was just a sneeze. A reflex." The advisor's expression remained impassive, though there was a flicker of something, perhaps pity, in his eyes. On Zanara Prime, such acts are imbued with significance beyond mere biology. They are seen as manifestations of cosmic intent. By law, you must now fulfill the obligations imposed upon you. Princess Valethra stepped forward, her movements graceful yet commanding. She studied Marcus intently, her luminous eyes searching his face as if seeking answers to questions only she understood. "Do not fear," she said softly, her voice carrying an odd mixture of reassurance and finality. "You are not alone in this. Together, we will navigate what comes next." Her words offered little comfort. Marcus's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of what had been thrust upon him. Obligations? Cosmic intent? None of it made sense. All he knew was that his life, once predictable and mundane, had been irrevocably altered by a single involuntary act. And as he stood there, caught between disbelief and despair, he realized the true depth of the burden placed upon him. Whatever lay ahead, it would demand more from him than he ever thought possible. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of confusion and mounting dread. Marcus was given quarters within the palace, luxurious accommodations that felt more like a gilded cage than a refuge. Servants attended to his every need, bringing meals he barely touched and garments tailored specifically for him. Yet, no matter how exquisite the surroundings, the oppressive weight of his situation suffocated him. He spent hours pacing the confines of his room, replaying the advisor's words in his mind, searching desperately for loopholes or explanations that might absolve him of this absurd fate. Each morning brought new lessons designed to prepare him for his role, a role he still struggled to comprehend. Tutors arrived punctually, teaching him the intricacies of Zanaran culture, history, and language. The script of their written word proved particularly challenging, its characters resembling intricate geometric patterns that defied logic. Despite his best efforts, Marcus stumbled repeatedly, frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. His instructors remained patient, though their eyes betrayed hints of concern. It was clear they doubted whether a human could ever fully grasp the complexities of their civilization. Interactions with Princess Valethra were sparse but charged with unspoken tension. She observed him during formal gatherings, her gaze penetrating yet inscrutable. On rare occasions, she approached him directly, offering guidance or asking questions about Earth and its people. Her curiosity seemed genuine, yet Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that she viewed him as some kind of anomaly, an experiment thrust upon her by forces beyond her control. Their conversations were polite but strained, each exchange underscored by the looming specter of obligation. Rumors spread quickly among the courtiers, their whispers reaching Marcus even in the privacy of his chambers. Some regarded him with thinly veiled disdain, dismissing him as an unworthy outsider unfit to share proximity with their revered princess. Others watched him with cautious fascination, speculating about the implications of his presence. A few dared to offer sympathy, though their kindness often felt tinged with condescension. Marcus endured it all silently, retreating further into himself as the isolation grew unbearable. At night, sleep eluded him. Vivid dreams plagued his restless mind, visions of alien landscapes and shadowy figures speaking in tongues he couldn't understand. He woke drenched in sweat, his heart pounding as fragments of the dreams lingered like echoes. The recurring image of the princess haunted him most, her luminous eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't name, her voice calling out to him in tones both gentle and urgent. Whether these dreams stemmed from guilt, fear, or something deeper, Marcus couldn't say. All he knew was that they left him feeling hollow, as though pieces of himself were slipping away. One evening, unable to bear the suffocating confines of his quarters any longer, Marcus ventured into the palace gardens. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of blossoms that glowed faintly in the twilight. He wandered aimlessly, seeking solace in the beauty around him, but even the tranquil setting failed to quiet his troubled thoughts. As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with the princess herself. She stood beneath a canopy of luminous vines, her silhouette illuminated by soft, cascading light. "I see you find no peace within these walls," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. There was no accusation in her tone, only observation. Marcus hesitated, unsure how to respond. "It's complicated," he managed finally, his voice rough with exhaustion. She nodded, as if expecting his answer. "Complication is the nature of bonds forged by fate. Even we cannot escape its pull." Her words struck a chord deep within him, stirring emotions he hadn't allowed himself to confront. Anger, resentment, fear, all tangled together in a knot he couldn't untangle. "Why me?" he blurted, the question bursting forth before he could stop it. "Why does this have to happen to someone like me? I didn't ask for any of this." The princess regarded him steadily, her expression unreadable. "Nor did I," she replied simply. "Yet here we are, bound by threads neither of us wove. Perhaps the question is not why, but what we choose to do with what has been given." Her response offered no clarity, only more questions. Marcus wanted to argue, to demand answers she clearly couldn't provide. But as he stared into her luminous eyes, he saw something unexpected: uncertainty. For the first time, he realized she was as trapped in this as he was, bound by laws and expectations far beyond her control. They stood there in silence, two strangers tethered by forces neither understood, surrounded by a world that seemed determined to reshape them both. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken truths and the weight of their shared predicament. Marcus felt the urge to say something, anything, to break the tension, but the words lodged in his throat like stones. Instead, he found himself studying her face, searching for signs of the same turmoil that churned within him. Her features were serene, almost regal, yet there was a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes that betrayed the calm exterior. It was as if she, too, was grappling with emotions she hadn't anticipated having to confront. "I don't know what to do," Marcus admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The admission felt raw, exposing a part of himself he rarely allowed anyone to see. "I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. Broken machines, faulty systems. Not this." Princess Valethra tilted her head slightly, considering his words. "Perhaps it is not your role to fix anything," she said after a pause. "Perhaps all you need to do is exist. To be present." Her response puzzled him, though not because it lacked meaning. On the contrary, it resonated deeply, stirring something primal and unfamiliar in his chest. But how could mere presence suffice when the stakes felt so impossibly high? How could he simply be when the consequences of failing loomed so large? Before Marcus could press further, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted their moment. A servant appeared at the edge of the garden path, bowing low before addressing the princess. "Your Highness, the council awaits your presence. They wish to discuss matters of protocol regarding the human." Valethra's expression hardened ever so slightly, a subtle shift that spoke volumes. She turned back to Marcus, her gaze softening once more. "We will speak again soon," she promised, her voice carrying a quiet resolve. Then, without another word, she followed the servant down the winding path, leaving Marcus alone amidst the glowing blossoms. Days turned into weeks, and Marcus's existence became a strange amalgamation of lessons, ceremonies, and fleeting encounters with the princess. Each interaction left him more conflicted than the last. There were moments when she seemed genuinely interested in understanding him, his thoughts, his fears, his hopes, but they were always fleeting, overshadowed by the rigid expectations placed upon her. He began to notice the toll it took on her, the way her shoulders tensed whenever advisors whispered in her ear or courtiers cast judgmental glances in his direction. She carried herself with grace, but beneath the surface, he sensed a weariness that mirrored his own. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling session on Zenaran customs, Marcus snapped. His tutor had been explaining the intricacies of ceremonial rituals, detailing the exact placement of hands and the precise inflection required for certain phrases. Frustration boiled over as Marcus slammed his fist against the table, startling everyone in the room. "I can't do this," he exclaimed, his voice trembling with emotion. "I'm not cut out for this life. I don't belong here." The tutor blinked in surprise, clearly unaccustomed to such outbursts. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, from the doorway, a familiar voice broke the silence. "Perhaps belonging is not the point." Marcus turned to see Princess Velethra standing there, her presence commanding immediate attention. She stepped into the room, dismissing the tutor with a wave of her hand. Once they were alone, she approached Marcus, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his anger giving way to curiosity. She folded her hands in front of her, her luminous eyes meeting his. "Belonging implies fitting perfectly into a mold already created. What if your purpose is not to fit, but to reshape?" Her words struck a chord, though their meaning remained elusive. "Reshape what?" he pressed. "Their laws? Their traditions? Me. All of it," she replied simply. "And none of it." "Change rarely happens without disruption, Marcus. You are a disruption, a catalyst. Whether you intended it or not, your arrival has altered the course of events." He stared at her, trying to reconcile her perspective with the chaos swirling inside him. Was it possible that his accidental sneeze, and everything that followed, was more than just a cosmic joke? Could it truly hold significance beyond his comprehension? As days passed, Marcus began to see glimpses of truth in Velethra's words. The courtiers who once regarded him with disdain now watched him with cautious intrigue. Rumors spread of his growing knowledge of Zenaran culture, his ability to adapt despite his origins. Even the tutors, initially skeptical of his capabilities, began to acknowledge his progress. Yet, for every step forward, there were setbacks. Missteps in etiquette, misunderstandings rooted in cultural differences, that reminded him of the vast chasm separating him from this world. Through it all, Velethra remained a constant presence, guiding him through the labyrinth of expectations while quietly challenging those who sought to undermine him. Their bond deepened, evolving into something neither of them could fully define. It wasn't friendship, nor was it romance, at least, not in any conventional sense. It was something entirely unique, forged in the crucible of circumstance and sustained by a mutual desire to understand. But even as Marcus found himself adapting to his new reality, shadows loomed on the horizon. Whispers of dissent rippled through the palace, fueled by those who viewed his presence as a threat to tradition. Advisors grew increasingly vocal in their concerns, warning of potential unrest among the populace. And then there were the dreams, visions that grew more vivid and urgent with each passing night, hinting at forces far greater than either of them had imagined. One evening, as Marcus stood on the balcony overlooking the city, he felt a presence beside him. Turning, he saw Velethra, her expression troubled. "There is something you must know," she said softly, her voice tinged with urgency. "Something I have kept hidden until now." Marcus's heart quickened. Whatever she was about to reveal, he knew it would change everything. The cool night breeze carried the faint scent of glowing blossoms as Marcus turned to face Princess Velethra. Her usual composure seemed fractured, her luminous eyes clouded with an emotion he couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps, or resolve. For the first time since their fateful meeting, she appeared vulnerable, unguarded. It was disconcerting yet strangely humanizing. "What is it?" Marcus asked, his voice low but steady. He could feel the weight of her words before she even spoke them, as though the air itself had grown heavier. Velithra hesitated, glancing briefly over her shoulder as if ensuring they were truly alone. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a gravity that made every syllable resonate deeply. "The bond we share, it is not merely a matter of law or tradition. There are forces at play here, ancient ones that even I do not fully understand." Marcus frowned, confusion knitting his brow. "Forces? What kind of forces?" She took a step closer, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. Long ago, before recorded history, our ancestors believed that certain events were guided by cosmic threads, interwoven destinies meant to shape the course of existence. These threads connect beings across species, worlds, and lifetimes. They cannot be seen, only felt. And when two souls are bound by such a thread, she trailed off, her voice faltering for the briefest moment. "They what?" Marcus prompted, his pulse quickening. "They change each other," she finished softly. "Irrevocably." The sneeze, the act you deemed so trivial, it was no accident. It was the manifestation of a connection already in motion, one that has existed between us long before we met. Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process her words. Cosmic threads? Ancient forces? None of it made sense, and yet, deep within him, something stirred, a flicker of recognition, as though part of him had always known this truth without understanding it. "And now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "What happens now?" Velithra's expression softened, though her eyes remained somber. "Now, we must navigate the consequences together. But know this, there are those who fear what we represent, what this bond might mean for Zanara Prime and beyond. Change is rarely welcomed, especially when it challenges the foundations upon which empires are built." Her warning hung in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him once more, the illusion of control slipping through his fingers. If what she said was true, if their connection was indeed preordained, then nothing about his presence here was accidental. Every misstep, every challenge, every whispered rumor suddenly took on new meaning. He wasn't just an outsider thrust into an alien world, he was a piece of something far greater, something potentially dangerous. Before he could respond, the distant sound of commotion reached their ears, a murmur rising from the city below. Both turned toward the balcony railing, peering out into the night. Faint lights moved through the streets, accompanied by the unmistakable hum of energy weapons charging. Panic rippled through Marcus as he realized what he was seeing: unrest. A crowd had gathered near the palace gates, their voices growing louder, angrier. "They've come for you," Velithra murmured, her tone grim. "The dissenters. They see you as a threat to everything they hold sacred." Marcus clenched the railing, his knuckles whitening. "So what do we do? Fight them? Run?" Her hand found his, gripping it tightly. "Neither. You must trust me." "Trust?" The word echoed in his mind, simple yet profound. In the weeks since their initial encounter, Marcus had learned to rely on her judgment, even when it defied logic. And now, faced with chaos brewing below, he knew he had no choice but to follow her lead. "Where do we go?" he asked, turning to meet her gaze. "To the archives," she replied. "There is knowledge there, truths hidden away for centuries, that may help us understand the nature of our bond and how to protect it. But we must move quickly." Without waiting for further questions, Velithra led him back inside, her movements swift and purposeful. They wove through dimly lit corridors, avoiding guards and servants alike, until they reached a concealed door hidden behind an ornate tapestry. With a touch of her palm against a glowing panel, the door slid open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. As they descended, the air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of aged parchment and metallic dust. The staircase opened into a vast chamber filled with towering shelves laden with scrolls, crystals, and holographic displays. It was a repository of knowledge spanning millennia, its contents safeguarded by layers of security and secrecy. "This is forbidden territory," Velithra explained as they moved deeper into the archives. "Few are permitted access, and fewer still know of its existence. But if answers exist, they will be here." Marcus marveled at the sheer scale of the collection, his engineer's mind instinctively cataloging the technological marvels surrounding him. Yet, amidst the wonder, unease lingered. The urgency in Velithra's actions suggested they weren't simply seeking information, they were racing against time. "What exactly are we looking for?" he asked, scanning the endless rows of artifacts. "A record of the threads," she replied, her voice tinged with determination. "A map of connections that transcend space and time. If we can find evidence of ours, we may uncover the purpose behind it, and perhaps a way to ensure its survival." Their search began in earnest, combing through ancient texts and activating dormant holograms. Hours passed unnoticed as they delved deeper into the archives, piecing together fragments of forgotten lore. Slowly, a pattern emerged, one that hinted at the existence of a grand design linking countless lives across the galaxy. But as dawn approached, casting faint light through hidden skylights, Marcus noticed a shadow moving among the shelves. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the eye, but then he heard it, the soft click of boots on stone. Someone, or something, was following them. "Velithra," he whispered urgently, tugging at her sleeve. "We're not alone." Her head snapped up, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the room. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice firm despite the tension in the air. Together, they moved cautiously toward the exit, their progress hindered by the need to avoid detection. As they rounded a corner, a figure stepped into view, blocking their path. Clad in dark robes, their face obscured by a hood, the intruder exuded an aura of menace that sent chills down Marcus's spine. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure intoned, their voice low and menacing. "Some truths are better left buried." Velithra stepped forward, positioning herself between Marcus and the stranger. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her own voice sharp with authority. The figure chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. "Does it matter? You've already awakened forces you cannot hope to comprehend. The question is whether you'll survive long enough to regret it." With that, the figure raised a hand, and the room erupted in chaos. Energy surged through the air, sending shelves toppling and artifacts crashing to the ground. Marcus grabbed Velithra's arm, pulling her toward a side passage as debris rained down around them. "We need to get out of here," he shouted over the din. She nodded, her grip tightening on his hand. "Follow me." They sprinted through the collapsing archives, dodging falling objects and bursts of energy as the mysterious assailant pursued them relentlessly. Each step felt like a gamble, every breath a defiance of fate. And yet, amidst the peril, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being driven, not toward escape, but toward revelation. As they emerged into the pre-dawn light, the palace looming ominously ahead, Marcus realized one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever awaited them next would test the limits of their bond, and determine the fate of both their worlds.